Hello, everybody, and welcome to Haiku Talk. I'm your host, Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet, and today we're going to be taking a look at a piece from the latest issue of Frogpond from Nathanael Tico with the first line of Learning the Name. So with that said, you know what time it is. Time to sit back, relax, grab yourself a tasty and hopefully cold beverage. It's very warm here in St. Louis, and let's haiku. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to be with you again for another episode of Haiku Talk, and let's get right to the poem. This poem goes like this. Learning the name of a tune loved since childhood, white-crowned sparrow. Learning the name of a tune loved since childhood, white-crowned sparrow. Beautiful. And I got to say, as a person in their late 40s, the loving of birds and learning birds and bird names and bird songs and stuff like that is something that means more and more to me the older that I get. So it really hits. So you find yourself at this age liking anthologies like this one, Bird Whistle, which is from Bottle Rocket Press. Thank you, Stanford Forrester, for putting together that wonderful anthology. And you end up buying books like this, Birds of Missouri, which is the state I live in. Have it next to my reading chair over here, just like my grandpa used to have next to his chair. I remember as a kid going over there and he'd have this big, thick Birds of America book next with binoculars next to his chair right by a window, so if anything, he'd see anything and he didn't know what it was, he just had it right there to look up. This is the original internet, books like this. And it turns out this bird, the white-crowned sparrow, is part of Missouri, at least in the winter. It's pretty fun. I got to look that one up. I definitely know this bird by sight. It's on page 117. And, this just speaks to me very deeply as to, kind of learning things, continuing to learn about life and your surroundings the older that you get, and kind of what things you find interesting the older you get. I saw one little internet cartoon about how, like, people, it had to do with a little signage chart in a park, that tells you some historical meaning or about wherever you are. And if you're in a teenagers or 20s, you walk right by it. In your 30s, you kind of notice it. In your 40s, you kind of stop and you read it. And then in your 50s on up, you pull other people in and hey, look at this, and have them read it too. So I'm in the stop and reading it phase of my life. And so that, like I said, this poem really appealed to me. The poem follows our fragment and phrase formatting that we are very familiar with the phrase up front, and that phrase is, lost my spot. That phrase is learning the name of a tune loved since childhood, and the fragment is white-crowned sparrow. And what's nice about that is you get all of this context up front, and then you learn what it pinpoints to in that third line. But before we go into that too, I just want to say I was really thinking about the line structure in here and how, like, where line breaks are set up, especially in these first two lines in that phrase. Because when you are writing, you always want to make sure that you get the right amount of information on the right line, that you break things in such a way that it's going to propel the reader forward, and that you're not overloading lines and you're not undercutting lines by not having enough information, and it's just finding that right balance. And I think this poem does a really good job in those first two lines, especially as to where it breaks the lines. With that said, let's look at this line by line and see how it's put together. So that first line is learning the name. Learning the name. And it's nice because it puts some sort of action in front of us, It's not necessarily a physical action, but it is a sense of knowing, a sense of awareness, a sense of learning new information. We're learning something here as readers, as is what's happening in the poem. And I really like that because line 2 then gives us a little bit more context about what that first line is. Line 2 is, of a tune loved since childhood. Of a tune loved since childhood. That's a cool line. It's a long line. I mean, it's only 7 syllables, but I mean, it feels like a long line compared to some of the other poems that I put on this channel, or maybe some of the other things that you've read. And long lines are okay as long as they serve the poem well. And when I've talked a little bit before about I like the line breaks here, is I tend to, when writing myself, when I come to a line that's got the word of in it, sometimes I don't necessarily know, do I want to end on the word of? Do I want to start a line with the word of? How is best to use that and make use of that? And in this case, I really like that the line begins with the word of. But more importantly, like how is this line broken? I could see a draft of this poem where the first line is learning the name of a tune, love. Just learning the name of a tune, with line 2 being loved since childhood. So you're learning the line of a tune, break, loved since childhood. And I think that's still, that works. But it doesn't work as eloquently as the way it's written here with that break after the word name. The reason being is that when you said learning the name, we don't know at that point as a reader what the name is. We don't know what this is setting up. And so we're compelled to move forward to line 2 to get that information. Had that first line been learning the name of a tune, we've kind of like already know what we're learning. And so for it's not as intriguing to go to line 2. I mean, I'm still going to read it, but it gives you a little bit too much information, I think, if it would have been that one line written that way with learning the name of a tune. By breaking it down to the second line, we learn more about what we're doing, what we're learning, what the name of the thing we're learning is. It's of a tune loved since childhood. And what's great about those first 2 lines is that still after line 2, we don't really know what this tune is. I'm led to believe when I'm reading it that it's probably a song, a specific song, maybe but of maybe like a rock and roll song or something you've heard on the radio or something you used to sing in church or something that would be relevant to humans, like a human-made song. And so when you get to line 3 and you read, white-crowned sparrow, you get that aha moment of the haiku, and the whole thing now pops into focus that, the thing that you've loved since childhood, the song that you've just learned the name of, is the song of the white-crowned sparrow. And how cool is that? How cool is that? And I know that I've definitely have had those experiences as well. Like, you've heard this song, this bird song, all your life, or you've remembered it since childhood. The common one that I can think of is the mourning dove. You hear that mourning dove sound, and I usually start to really notice it in spring, and it really kind of reminds me of that spring and summer feeling of just when I was a kid anyway, of waking up and just hearing that song, is very distinctive. Now, I've known that the name of that bird for a long time, so I didn't make that discovery in middle age or in a place where you are grown up. I wouldn't say necessarily middle-aged, because you don't have to be middle-aged. You just have to be old enough to be separated from something called childhood. So that could be at any point in your life, really. But, it's that thing where it's so familiar and you never bothered to learn or didn't know where to learn. Or didn't even know how to ask the question, what's the name of the thing making that sound? What's the bird making that bird song? Because maybe you've never even seen it in the tree. You haven't been able to identify what it looked like. You just heard the noise. But suddenly, at a later point in life, you learn the name of that thing. And you get to kind of somehow reclaim or rediscover or relive those memories of childhood. and it's like they're real. They have meaning. They make sense now in a way that they didn't as a kid. I know I'm going to digress here a little bit, but there are certain things like bits of cartoons or something that I remember from childhood that I have no way of that are in my head, but I wasn't sure. You know, the further away you get from childhood, you're not sure if they were real or not. And in some cases, you have to do, like, I've had to do some really deep Google digging to try to figure out what is this bit of a robot cartoon that I saw in my childhood somewhere that I've had in my head, that I tried to build like a Lego version of it once when I was a kid, but I can never find any reference to it. And, you know, I had the wrong version of a name. Like, I had the way it sounded in my head, but it didn't quite come out right. And then I kind of found something that resembled it as a Japanese phrase. And then I was able to dig up the picture and, like, that's it. That's the cartoon. There's the clip. There's the thing. There's the thing I tried to build as Legos when I was 7. I don't know where I saw it, but I'm so glad I found this because it's real. I'm not crazy. This thing did exist. And in this case, when you find out the name, like in this case of the name of this bird, of the song that you've heard since childhood, it's like, that part of my childhood existed. It's real. I can identify this. I can speak about this with other people, and they'll know what I'm talking about with the same shared experience because we have the name. We can talk about the same bird, and now we have a common way to communicate about this. And so this poem is just wonderful. And again, the way that it's built line by line, moving you forward to get to that third line of discovery, it's sort of like working through the process of getting to that discovery of what the name of the white-crowned sparrow. You know, it's built very, very well to lead us to that same point of discovery in the third line, so that it becomes an aha moment for us as much as it was for the poet that experienced it. And I really like and appreciate that. And then it allows me, again, to connect it to other things in my own life, which is what a good haiku, a good poem does. And so it's very well done. Very, like I said, very hit home for me, especially with birds. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this. If you're watching this channel on haiku, chances are you're a bird lover yourself in some way, shape, or fashion, and this might hit you too. And if that's true, you know, please leave a comment on here about a similar experience you might have had with a bird, with a cartoon, with something else that later in life you've learned the name or of the thing from your childhood experience that you're like, aha, now I know what this is. The light went off. It's a real thing. That's really cool. And it would be cool to read. And with that wraps up another episode of Haiku Talk. Again, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate those that do watch, especially watch to the end. Please like this video if you do like it. It helps it show up in the Google and YouTube algorithms, so it'll pop in somebody's feed unexpectedly, and that's always cool. Think about subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you've liked and subscribed, ring that little bell, click that little bell icon, and so you'll get notified when new episodes do appear in the wonderful world of the internet. Until then, I hope all is well in your world. I hope you're cool if your world is hot. I hope you're warm if your world is cold. Cheers, everybody.